Welcome back to AM Northwest. Our first guest is the co-creator of the Normal Gossip podcast and loves a phone call that starts with, "You're never going to believe this." We welcome the author of You Didn't Hear This From Me, mostly true notes on gossip, Kelsey McKinney. Good to have you with us, Kelsey.
Hi.
Your book is a riot. It's also
you.
very informational, I have to say. So how do you define gossip?
So I use a really expansive definition of gossip,
Okay.
which is just two people talking about someone who's not present. So that's everything. It's you and I talking about Taylor Swift, but it's
Right.
also two doctors talking about a patient.
Who's not there?
Exactly.
Who's not there?
Who's not there.
It can be good. It
Yeah.
can be it's positive.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think I think gossip is really unfairly maligned by a lot of people because
Right.
they conflate it with libel and slander.
Right.
And libel and slander are lies. Gossip
Right.
is not lies, it's just information sharing.
Gotcha. How did you get interested in gossip? Because didn't you grow up in a pretty religious family?
Yeah, I grew up very evangelical. I'm from Texas originally.
Okay.
And so I was told my whole life that gossip was a sin. And unfortunately, I was so good at it. So even though I was being told constantly.
Wait a second, you were so good at gossip.
I was
You were
really
told
good at
it was
it.
a sin. Okay,
Yeah, and I was like, this is terrible. This
Yeah.
thing that I'm so good at is
Yeah.
a sin. And so I kind of had to process that over time. And I realized, I didn't think that it was a sin in all cases, because in most cases, you weren't trying to hurt anyone.
Right.
And that is where I think this line gets really messy, is that people think of gossip as something that is only to hurt people.
Right.
And in a lot of situations, it's made to help.
Well, doesn't it usually bond people?
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
tons of scientific studies that show that when two people are gossiping, they feel closer together. Like,
Yeah.
you don't gossip with someone you hate.
Right.
You only gossip with your friends.
True.
And literally, they have scientific studies that show that your heart rate lowers when you're gossiping with someone. So
that's
even though
funny.
you're getting all rowdy and
Yeah.
excited, it's like you feel calm.
And I'm pretty sure I read a news story about how coworkers have a great connection if they're able to gossip with each other.
Yeah.
Like they get along better.
It's true anecdotally, right?
Yeah.
That like if you gossip with your coworkers, you're happy at work.
Yeah.
But they also have done a lot of sociological studies that show that workplaces are happier when people are talking to each other, and particularly when they're talking about each other, because
Oh,
that
wow.
kind of brings them closer together.
Okay. But I think you mentioned too that if they have one person that everyone
Yeah.
is gossiping about, then there's really bonding.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite studies that I read when I was working on this book, is about how if there's one person in a workplace that no one likes, or
Right.
that everyone is talking about, it's usually a boss.
Yeah.
That makes the workplace much happier. Like, the happiness quotient of that workplace elevates immediately.
Isn't that fascinating?
It's so interesting because it's like
Wow.
a common enemy. It's the same with like a fandom, right?
Yeah.
It's like having something to bind you together
Yeah.
will make you feel happier.
Well, I think it's hard though for us to think about gossip in a positive way, especially when you think about like tabloids where they put lies out there
Yeah,
and
of
slander, as you
course.
mentioned. That's a tough one. But there is something fun about mentioning something that has at least a kernel of truth.
Yeah, it's a little
Yeah.
salacious,
Yeah.
right? And I think what's so interesting to me about gossip is that obviously you can't take every single thing you hear as
No.
a verifiable fact, right? You need to like question the things that are put in front of you. But usually, even within a piece of gossip that isn't 100% true, you can find out something that is, right?
Right.
So something about like what your society values or
Right.
what people think is hidden in that information, which
Yeah.
I find really fun.
Oh my gosh, what's some of the best bits of gossip you shared? Because
Oh
I know
my
you do
God.
tours and you talk with people. Have
Yeah.
you shared anything really that you'd love to share with us?
Oh, I'm just constantly taking like a fire hose of gossip to the face because it's my job.
Oh yeah,
which is
because
like,
people come up to you with the best gossip ever.
yeah, it's great. I recently heard a really good gossip about a guy who I live in Philadelphia, and they recently won the Super Bowl, and he had broken up with his girlfriend. She had broken up with him because he told her that she was pretty enough to go on Love Island. And she was like, "Oh, you're right. I am pretty enough to go on Love Island." And she broke up with him. And then he went to the Super Bowl parade, and she was there with his best friend.
Oh no! Now that's some
So
good. That's
bad.
spilling some tea
I know.
right there.
I know.
Maybe that's why it's so much fun to go to like your hairstylist and hear the stuff that's going on.
Yeah, my hairstylist, who I love so much, is constantly telling me things.
Right.
And she's like, her favorite part of her job is that people come in and they just like open their jaws and tell her everything inside
Yeah.
their body. It
Oh,
seems great.
Isn't that something that's what we do with our hairstylists? Yeah,
yeah.
it is. Also, you talk too in your book about the culture of gossip. It's been around forever, and every
Yeah.
society has kind of their own form of gossip.
Yeah, some anthropologists believe that we actually learned to talk to one another and developed language so that we could gossip, so
Yeah.
that we could say like, well, that guy's really strong, so we should send him on the hunt instead of him.
Oh, wow, back that far.
Yeah,
I
like
think about,
very early.
I think about like Hawaiian culture where they talk story.
Yeah.
And that's just sitting around chatting about anything
Yeah.
and everything and everybody. And the Irish who talk about, you know, they do tell great stories, the Irish, right?
It's funny, you can tell in the same way that you can tell from across the room that somebody is gossiping in a bar, right?
Yeah.
You can tell it in other languages too. Like in the airport, I see people talking all the time and I'm like, oh, they know something. That's
Yeah.
some gossip, and I don't speak that language. It's universal. Everyone's talking about everyone all the time.
When you say you were good at gossip as a kid, can you think back to when you were gossiping? Was it like you were gossiping with girlfriends in high school?
Yeah, and I was always really aware of like social maneuvers and what people were doing, and that is kind of what makes a good gossip, is being like, well, why are those two people sitting so close to each other?
Right.
It's observation of the world.
Right.
And I've always been really curious. You know, every human is curious. It's
Sure.
like part of what makes us people.
Oh,
is
yeah.
this kind of like desire to know what's going on.
Now, some people call me nosy, but curious
is such
what
a
I say.
flattering word.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm the same. I'm nosy. I'm curious. I was always paying attention.
You're right. And usually the person who gossips the most is the one you go to get the scoop,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If you know someone in your workspace, like, oh, so-and-so will have the scoop on that. Let's ask him.
Yeah, it's hard because what makes someone a good gossip is being the kind of person that people want to tell things to.
Right.
But
and how do they get that ability?
exactly,
Like,
but also not telling everything all the time.
right.
Because
Oh.
if you tell everyone everything, no one will tell you anything.
Right.
So there's a kind of delicate dance you have to play.
Wow. What have you learned when you did your you don't do the podcast now, but you
Yeah, I've
started the
stepped
podcast, is normal gossip. What did you learn doing that?
I learned that everyone is more chaotic than you think they are. Genuinely.
Yeah.
I mean, we would get these emails and I would just be like, this is wild that
Yeah.
people are behaving this way. And then you read 5,000 more emails and it turns out everyone's behaving that way
Yeah.
in everywhere. So I learned that. I also learned that a lot
Was
of
there one thing that stands out to you about like how bizarre that was?
a thing I think about a lot is that you could not pay me any amount of money anymore to go on a bachelorette trip.
Yeah.
Because I have read so many
Yeah,
stories about
yeah.
people going on bachelorette trips and
And
just
losing
being,
their mind.
losing
Yeah.
their absolute mind.
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot about that. I also learned that most of what makes great gossip is actually storytelling. It's the way that you set up the
way
story
you
and
tell the
it.
story. Because you can know a good story, but you have to be able to tell a good story.
Exactly.
Right? Right?
Yeah.
Speaking of telling good stories, you're going to be at Livewire.
I am today.
They tell
yeah.
great stories there. Are you excited about
Oh,
that?
I'm so excited.
Yeah, because you listen to it, right?
Yeah, I do. I'm really excited to go, and I always have a really fun time doing Livewire, so I
Yeah,
think it'll be fun.
and Luke Burbank is wonderful. We love him.
Yeah.
He tells a good story.
Yeah, and I'm going to be in conversation with Karen Russell, who
Oh,
is
great.
also great, and her new book has a bunch of gossip in it too, so I think it should be fun.
Oh,
yeah.
that's awesome. Okay, so we want to tell everyone again, the book is titled You Didn't Hear This From Me, mostly true notes on gossip. Kelsey McKinney, thank you so much. Great to meet you.
Great to meet you too. Thanks so much for having me.
I'll tell you some good scoop after the show.
Please.
Okay. All right, we'll be right back with more AM Northwest. Don't go away.